Hello and welcome, Algebra 2 geniuses. Today we are going to learn how to factor given that A is not 1. So up until this point, we've had trinomials that look like this. And we would find our factors of 15, and we would write them down here. And we would see which one of those give us this middle term, and we would go straight into writing the factors just like this. But I don't know if you've noticed, but up until this point, I've made a, or that coefficient in front of x squared, to be 1. Now we're going to look at ones that a is not 1. So for example, like this. In this case, a is not 1. So now we're looking at things where a is anything other than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc., etc. Some of it is going, or factoring trinomials like this where a is not 1 is going to be very similar to when a is 1 in some cases, and then some it's going to be still similar, but a little bit different. So in this one, we first want to look, is there any number or variable that we can factor out from that trinomial to make it even simpler? In this case, yes, we do. We have one. 2, 16, and 30 all have 2 in common. So we factor out the 2. What I've done after I factored out that 2 is I made that trinomial a little bit simpler. Now that trinomial that I underlined has a to be 1, a, the coefficient in front of x squared, is 1, and now we can just go straight into factoring like we just had. We just had that example actually. So first we want to see, is there anything we can factor out to make that coefficient in front of x squared 1, or that trinomial a little bit simpler so we're not working with bigger numbers. And if that's the case, after we get a trinomial to be where a is 1, we can factor like we know how to. Sometimes we'll have examples that look a little bit different, like this one. Where I see, do 2, 11, and 12 have anything in common? In this case, no, they don't. So we see, what do we do from here? What are the factors that when we multiply those give us that trinomial? How we do that, we call this the AC method. Why? Because we always start out by multiplying A times C, and that's how we're going to find our factors that we can get to be our final answer. So first, let's start out by multiplying 2 times 12. 2 times 12 gives us 24, and we write down the factors of 24 like we've done before. So 1 and 24, blah, 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 all these factors. And we figure out the same thing once again, which one of those factors will still give us that middle term. And in this case, what gives us a positive 11 is a positive 3 and a positive 8. So I'm just going to move this down here to rewrite it to make it a little bit neater. What we're going to do now is use those factors of 3 and 8 and completely replace that middle term. So I'm not going to do anything with the first term. I'm going to replace 11x with 3x plus 8x, and then bring down our last term, which is 12. Now these orders don't matter here. It wouldn't matter if I put 8x first and then 3x later, or 3x first and then 8x. Order doesn't matter as long as we replace 11x with those factors of 3 and 8. Now we've got 4 terms, so I hope our brain would go to think that if we've got 4 terms, we've got to factor by grouping. So I'm going to group the first 2 together, group the second 2 together. We see, what do 2x squared and 3x have in common? They've got an x, so we factor that out. And then I see, what do 8x plus 12 have in common? They have a 4 in common. So we factor that out, which is good because this term and this term match up. That's what we want. So we factor out the 2x plus 3, and we are left with x plus 4. And there we have it. We have completely factored a trinomial when a is not 1. Let's try another one. So we do the same thing again. We use the AC method to factor when a is not 1. But first we see, do 4x squared minus 4x minus 3. Do the numbers have anything in common? Do the variables have anything in common to factor out? No. So we jump straight into the AC method. A times C. 4 times negative 3 gives me negative 12. I write down my factors of negative 12 with in mind that I'm trying to replace it with a negative 4. So 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4, negatives. And I think which one of those would give me a negative 4? Positive 2 and negative 6. So now I completely replace negative 4 with those two terms. So I don't do anything with the first term. I replace negative 4x with a positive 2x and a negative 6x, and I bring down my third term. We see 4 terms. Our brain needs to go to thinking factor by grouping. 4x squared and 2x have 2x in common. Negative 6x and a negative 3 have a negative 3 in common, which is good because those match up. We factor that out. And there we've done it. We again factored a trinomial where a is not 1. So now I've got some u-tries for us. So this would be a great time after you write down these u-tries to pause the video, work these on your own, and then play the video where I'll have my answers up so you can see how you did. $24, not 26. And there we have it. Now we should know how to factor a trinomial given that a is not 1.